Okay. As a preliminary matter, this is Rima Sherry, the Vice Chairperson of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. All right, Meg Browers.
Here.
Dave Iverson.
Here.
Tom Dixon.
Here.
Penny Dye.
Here.
And that is all I see for members.
Chantal Blois Murphy's also here.
Oh, there you are in the corner. Great, Chantal, thank you. Now staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. I see Christy Ferrantella.
Here.
And Ellis Ramos.
Here.
And do we have town council anywhere that I need to?
Lee Smith from KP Law is here.
Okay, all right. Great.
And Janelle Austin as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called further. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call votes. All right, so at this point, we're on item 2, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Christy?
Yes, so we're going to move the approval of minutes to the July 9th meeting. They were just incomplete and we want to finish them.
Okay, great. I'm going to make everybody bigger because there's so many people. It's hard to see. Okay, so that takes us, let's see, we'll have to vote to approve the agenda. Do I hear a motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
And that was Dave seconding. Okay, by roll call vote. Meg Bowers.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Chantal Blois Murphy.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, so that's taken care of, and we will move on to Item 5, announcements. Christy, would you care to do the announcements? Oh, and Penny seems.
I'm sorry, I think there was some confusion with the amendment on the agenda. We have to go back to number 3, public comments.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. I'm like out of it today. All right, item 3, public comment, and I see 2 hands. Let's start with Mary Mack.
Hi, thanks. My name is Mary Mack, and my comment is about the Lease to Locals program. I think we should look at this Lease to Locals housing program in much the same way as medical professionals make medical decisions, that is based on the risks versus benefits rationale. For example, do the benefits of doing procedure A or giving medication B to a person outweigh the risks of doing procedure A or giving medication B? Do the benefits of funding this program to house people right now outweigh the risks of funding it? Some risks include the program's temporary nature, that it is not year-round housing in perpetuity. Also, some may try to game the system, etc. Is it not a good investment because the housing is not in perpetuity, but rather a year-to-year funding scenario? Is it tax dollars thrown away? I don't think so. The benefits are many. People that we desperately need to stay in the community and that are in desperate need of safe housing are stably housed for at least a year and perhaps longer. Is it worth the extra expenditure to the taxpayer in exchange for a safer, more secure island community right now? Is it worth this extra expenditure to help bridge the housing gap? We can also think of this program in terms of an insurance policy where we all pay premium to be insured. The insurance is community safety. The insurance benefit, rather, is community safety and security for a year or maybe longer. If you have health insurance and remain healthy for a year of coverage, it may feel like a waste of money if nothing bad happened, but you were financially protected if something did. You were lucky.
Okay, Mary,
Yeah.
this is actually an agenda item. And so what we normally do is if it's something that's on the agenda, maybe we can continue your public comment when we get to that, because usually the public comment is for items not on the agenda. And because I don't do this very often, I kind of miss that.
I wish someone said something, because I said
I
what
know.
I know.
But we'll take what you've said so far to heart, and we'll get back to you when we are on that agenda item, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Okay, Megan? Did you want to talk about something that is on the agenda, Megan, or something that isn't?
I just wanted to ask if you'll be taking public comment on the open meeting law violation. Specifically, since I'm on the agenda, it doesn't say public comment afterwards, so I was just asking if I'll be able to speak.
No, that's an agenda item, and we
Just making sure.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you.
We'll hear from you soon. Thank you. All right. Anything else? Public comment that is not on the agenda. And we have Brian. And Christy is raising it. Christy?
Thank you. Just a quick public comment. In case anybody missed it, the Affordable Homes Act is moving through the legislation process, and it just made its way to the Senate. They did release a bill that does not include the transfer fee, but does still include the community seasonal communities designation. So the town has sent a lot of emails out to constituents. We have things on social media and our website. And we're encouraging people to write to the Senate president and to our Senator Julian Cyr to encourage them to either add an amendment to include the transfer fee or to continue to support the seasonal communities designation. So you can find out all of that information on our website with a template for the testimony. And we would just encourage everybody to write in and support the affordable housing provisions in the Affordable Homes Act. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Brian, are you all the way on, or you seem to be a little freezy?
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm just on my phone, so I don't have I don't have the agenda or paperwork.
Okay.
But I wanted to be attending if the computer gets back.
Okay, great. All right. Well, then I will continue on to item 5, announcements. Christy, other announcements besides what you?
Yes, so similar to the last meeting, I just wanted to make sure the community was aware that there's 2 lotteries going on for affordable housing. The first one is for Habitat for Humanity, and they are developing homes for home ownership that will serve the 80% AMI and under. All these units will be on our SHI list, and their lottery is open until July 15th. You can find out more information at Habitat's website, but this is the first 4 of their 6 homes on Waite Drive. The second lottery is Housing Nantucket, and this is for their Wiggles Way development. And their lottery is open until July 2nd, and that's for 22 units of rentals. And there's 80% AMI units, affordable restricted, and then there's workforce housing that serves up to 150% of AMI. So I just encourage you to go to their website. If you put in your information and it says you do not qualify for the affordable units, you could still qualify for the workforce. So just follow the process all the way through to put your name on those lists for those units. And those are the 2 options that are open at the moment. I just want to make sure the community is aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. All right. Are there any other announcements by any members? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to item 7, which is review and discussion of the open meeting law complaint. Christy, would you like to introduce this and talk a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to introduce Janelle Austin from KP Law, who has been our representative on this to review the determination and any of the outcomes with the trust. So I'm going to turn it over to Janelle.
All right, I recognize Janelle.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all. Christy had asked me to provide all the members with an update. As many of you will recall, there was an open meeting law complaint that was filed last summer by Megan Glowacki, who is here today, I understand. And essentially there was an allegation that the trust violated the open meeting law with respect to an executive session that was held on April 7th, 2023. In addition, with respect to an allegation that the open session meeting minutes were not timely approved. As you know, the trust met to review the allegations of the complaint and issue a response. That response was provided to the complainant, as well as to the Attorney General's Division of Open Government. Following that response, the complainant did ask the Attorney General for further review of the complaint itself, and the Attorney General, after several months, reviewed everything and issued a determination on April 25th, 2024. It's my understanding that the trust has been provided with a copy of that determination. Essentially, the bottom line is that no further remedial action is required at this juncture based on the Attorney General's decision. As you all know, the meeting minutes from the April 7th, 2023 executive session were previously released to members of the public with very minimal redactions, subject to privilege under the public records law. The Attorney General often also had found that the open meeting law does not require the public bodies post their minutes to the website, or they be submitted, but that they be made available within 10 days. While there was a determination that there was an improper discussion under Purpose 6, as the meeting minutes of April 7, 2023 have now been released, there's no further remedial action required as determined by the Attorney General's office, and therefore this matter is now resolved. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that anyone has. Thank you.
All right, any questions from the board? No comments? None. Okay, from the public? Megan?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I did want to point out that the Attorney General did find that the board did violate the open meeting law with this violation, as you are all well aware. And that meeting, the board did decide to advise the select board to drop the appeal of Surfside Crossing because this board, for some reason, felt the need to interject themselves and say that the ZBA did not have the ability to win the appeal. Two organizations, two nonprofits continued on, and we have won the appeal not once but twice in Superior Court, further gaining leverage in this case. So my hope is that the Affordable Housing Trust will not continue to violate the law and also will not interject themselves in matters that they're not party to in the future. I sat through multiple meetings where the trust basically said to me, you didn't file this within time, so, you know, doesn't really matter, which I found a little bit frustrating. It wasn't that you guys violated the law, it was that you felt I didn't file it within a timely manner. And that's a little bit frustrating to me. I've also sat through many meetings, like the town meetings, where members of the trust have kind of personally attacked me for asking questions and making comments that I felt were unbecoming of representatives of the town, which you guys are. And you're a representative of me as a taxpayer, and I don't think that's fair to do. In the future, I hope that the trust and the members of the trust try to appreciate that while I might be asking questions, I'm asking questions and making comments for the better of our entire community. I'm not violating laws by doing that. And I hope that the trust doesn't attempt to hinder other boards by making decisions that you're not asked to be a part of yet. I understand that it's affordable housing at all costs, but you need to take into other considerations. It's not okay to basically euthanize one shelter dog to bring in another shelter dog. You need to think about the consequences of your actions. And sometimes it does mean that maybe you just take a back seat for a moment. The way this went down was just disturbing to a number of people. And I really hope that the trust looks to their mission and does good things instead of continuing to violate the law like this. So again, I appreciate what the trust does. I think affordable housing is a noble cause, but it would be great to do it in a manner which you're not violating the law. And when someone brings it to your attention, rather than saying you didn't file this in a timely manner, there was a better way to remedy this. You could have remedied it on the spot. So I appreciate the time and effort that everybody puts into this. I would appreciate if, rather than just marginalizing the questions and comments that I have because of who I am and the questions that I ask, that maybe just take into consideration what I'm bringing to the table as well, because I am a member of this community and I am trying to do what is good for the greater community, whether you see it or you don't. So thank you guys very much for your time on this, and I welcome any comments that this board has to say back to me.
Thank you, Megan. Penny?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Austin. Can you just clarify once and for all? I was not at that meeting on April 7th, which doesn't really matter, except that I would like to know, is this issue is closed now in terms of the Attorney General and the Affordable Housing Trust, is that correct?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, that's correct. This matter is fully resolved at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to add too, if anybody in this community has any issue with somebody's behavior on an individual basis, they need to bring it directly to that person. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Is there any other comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to item 8, 31 Fairgrounds Wiggles Way status update.
Oops, that's me.
Okay, and I recognize Penny as
Thank you.
our member of the building committee too. Yes.
Yeah, a member of the construction committee. I love on the agenda, it's Wiggled Way, which I think is kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, okay, your construction committee has been meeting every Wednesday for a very long time now. It feels like more than some months. I think Billy's here, so if I if I need to be corrected on anything, let me know. The flooring is finished in all of the units. Right now, some minor finish electrical and carpentry is happening over the next week or so. All of the granite curbing is installed. For the sidewalks, all the bases are done. They're going to be pouring a finished test pad soon and concrete next week. And then all 6 patios and finished sidewalk coats will be done. Followed by landscaping the entire rear area behind units 2 through 7. All the trees are planted now. Dobert, which is the HVAC contractor, is done with the mechanical work. They still have to finish insulating some duct work. Next week, ordering of appliances and continued work on finishing the landscaping. The installation of the solar panels is ongoing. It's going more slowly than initially anticipated. I think the date originally for completion was July 5th. And that may well delay the last thing to happen, which is the final paving by Victor Pitkauskas, Victor Brandon Company. And Billy, did I get that right? I think I got everything in there.
Almost. We're not going to be done with all sidewalks, concrete having been poured next week.
Okay.
It will initiate next week, and the test pad that you referred to is being done likely later on this week. It is formed up. I believe it will be done as soon as I get back there. And I apologize. I was just stuffing my face with a handful of potato chips. So there are 6 trees remaining to be planted. If you drive by, you will see them out in the front of the property. The reason they're not planted is they interfere with access in the rear of the property, and we will seal ourselves out. The patios in the back will be being poured next week, and hopefully they will be complete. We are awaiting a shipment of what is known as retarder, which, without getting too technical, it allows an exposed aggregate finish to the concrete that will be poured. Very similar to any of you that may have gone over to the old Hayes property that the land bank purchased a couple of years ago. Those are exposed aggregate sidewalks, and that is the same finish that we will be doing in Wiggles Way. Everything else is pretty accurate. We'll be ordering appliances the end of next week. There is finished plumbing, electric, and when I say finish electric, for instance, there are a couple of what the hell do you call them? Appliances, a couple of lamps and so on and so forth that need to be hung. The outdoor lighting is still waiting to be put up. There are several toilets that still need to be set and so forth. But we're getting down to it.
Thank you.
Great news. One thing, a personal note, this is my last meeting, but if there is a ribbon cutting ceremony, I would really like to know about it so I can be present and possibly round up an off-island member of the original family if possible.
Pardon me, Madam Vice Chair. Not only will you be invited, it will be demanded that you be. And if you want to bring Sally, that's fine. But I think it only appropriate, particularly for somebody that laid the Dickler Award on me, which I have not yet recovered from.
Oh, wow. I know. Tough. Tough one. Christy.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that the construction committee is planning to do a ribbon cutting when completed, and we have been in conversations with the team from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and we're hoping that the Secretary of Housing will join us for that as well. So as soon as we have a set date, we will be blasting that information everywhere, and we'll make sure all trust members, former and existing, are invited. So thank you.
Excellent. Great. All right. Is there anything else? Any comments from the board on Wiggles Way? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on to item 9, request for funding for Lease to Locals program. And let's see, Christy, who shall I recognize first for that?
Yeah, so I'm happy to kind of kick it off. So just to remind everybody, Colin from Placemate and Julia from Act Now Community Initiatives has been in front of the board a couple of times to discuss their Lease to Locals pilot program. They've reviewed how the program has worked, how they envision the future of it working and being transferred over to Housing Nantucket. And they've come to us with a request for funding for what I kind of have been phrasing as like a pilot version 2 to keep the program going and create a longer term program. So at the last meeting, which was on June 11th, they had come forward with a request of $550,000 to support a second year of incentives for existing homeowners and to attract new homeowners to convert to a year-round use. Since that last meeting, I just wanted to give an announcement that Act Now Community Initiatives received a $100,000 grant from Remain to support the Lease to Locals program. So this is going to reduce the ask to the Affordable Housing Trust to $450,000. And Remain's grant is intended to help address the urgent need for year-round housing on the island and to support the program's mission of converting the use of dwellings on the island into year-round use. The goal of this donation is to encourage new donors to join in supporting this program and supporting this for existing people who are using the program and to continue to convert additional use of short-term rentals and unoccupied housing into year-round use. So I just wanted to give that update and the exciting news that there's been a lot of ask for it to be a public-private partnership, and this will hopefully spur more donations to come. And on that note, I would ask you to recognize Colin and Julia to walk us through an updated deck that handles a lot of the questions that were asked at the last meeting.
Okay, I do see Brian's hand up, and I'm wondering if you're just have something to say, or you want to.
I have a quick question. It's exciting to hear about the donation. Christy, you mentioned that it was connected to new units and conversions, restrictions on it to be used that way, or could it be used for pre-existing? Are there any restrictions with the use of the money?
So that those funds would be used for incentives only. So it could either be the existing homeowners to continue for year 2 or to attract the new homeowners to convert for year 1. But it would not be used for operational expenses.
Okay.
Okay, so we go to Colin to talk about responding to our questions and concerns raised at the last meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will share my screen and have a presentation here. Get the slideshow mode. So my name is Colin Froelich from Placemate. We're here to first address the June 11th Affordable Housing Trust meeting feedback and then review the ask. There were also attached to the board packet, there were program policies that were redlined based on some of the feedback from this June 11th meeting. So there's details in there that we can also review if needed. Just jumping right into it. For the June 11th meeting, the first question that kind of came in, these are in chronological order. We wanted to come back and review the ones we hadn't answered and then kind of give succinct updates on the ones that we had answered just to give clarity and closure. So first, Penny had asked, can the HT funding be used for projects that are not locked in perpetuity? And this was to be kicked over to town council. If Chair can recognize council, I think we could answer on that, or if Christy can answer it.
Christy, did you get anything on that?
No, I was going to direct it to Lee.
Okay, yes, Lee, I recognize you then.
Thank you. So again, Lee Smith, KP Law Town Council. So we have reviewed this in-house, and in my opinion, the funds can be used for projects such as this, even though they are not restricted in perpetuity. There is some precedent for this, specifically in Nantucket for workforce housing for municipal employees. The KP has previously provided a written opinion on that to the town manager. The two legal principles that are implicated here are the public purpose rule and the anti-aid amendment to the Constitution. of Massachusetts. Their similar public purpose rule would generally prohibit the expenditure of public funds for private or individual purposes. However, it can be lawful if the predominant purpose of the expenditure is to advance a public purpose, which this supplying or providing housing opportunities in Nantucket certainly would be one. Well, I wouldn't call Nantucket necessarily a unique island, just for shorthand. It's certainly a unique situation given its geographic location and the costs associated with local housing, and the difficulty connected with, as you all know, being able to have folks who serve the community, whether it's public safety, police, fire, teachers, other essential public services, and other employees just serving all types of businesses in Nantucket. Turning then to the anti-aid amendment, the use of public funds for a private purpose can be considered acceptable if that public purpose is really only an incidental benefit to the private individual, but the primary benefit is in fact to the public purpose. And our opinion is for those reasons and the general state of the housing situation in Nantucket, that it would be permissible, notwithstanding a restriction in perpetuity.
Thanks. I'm going to recognize Penny for a follow-up on this original question.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Vice Chair, to Attorney Smith, can you just address the fair housing issue that we had raised as well while we're talking about this?
In terms of preferential or local preferences?
In terms of any potential impact or violation of federal fair housing rules in allocating the funds this way. I just want to be clear that that's something that's permissible.
I have not looked at that specifically with respect to the federal fair housing rules, but I have looked at a similar issue a number of years ago with respect also through this trust, which is, I'd say, comparable, and that's the extent of the justification for local preference under what was then DHCD, now EOHLC, but it concluded basically, given, again, pardon the phrase, but the unique nature of Nantucket, that the island has to be viewed in its own respect with regard to considering the eligibility for local preferences in terms of geographic area. Whereas if it was on the mainland, perhaps the consideration of eligible persons would be much larger in terms of a radius. So I think there's certainly parallel arguments that can be made, but I can follow up with you if you'd like on the specifics about the fair housing.
I think that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Let's go back to Colin.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The next question to be addressed was from Penny. This one's directed to Christy. Why can't we not use bonded funds? Christy gave me an answer in preparation for this meeting. So the answer is bonded funds are for capital and cash is used for operations, and this will be considered ongoing operations. Christy, if there's anything you want to add to that or anyone has any follow-up, raise your hand now. Otherwise, I'll keep going. Oops. Okay, seeing none, keep going. Brian asked a question, do we think this program could be successful if the program went from 240% AMI to 175% for qualified tenants? The short answer I gave before was yes. The qualifier we want to follow up with is that any income restriction does run the risk of excluding some participants. This was laid out, I think, pretty thoughtfully in the program policies for the restrictions we currently have on tenants. And so it certainly is adjustable and at the discretion of this board, especially as the funds would be directed towards the incentives. The recommendation we have would be to stick to 240%, but it certainly could be brought down to 175%.
Okay, on this one, I'd like to entertain any comments from the board on the idea of going down to 175. If anyone has any strong feelings about that. Penny.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute. I just think when we throw around these percentages, it's a lot more helpful to talk about it in terms of the dollars. And 175 is 238,000 right now of AMI. And hold on, I haven't done the 240 is 326,400.
That's for a family, or how many?
Yeah, I believe so. And I guess there's no way to know in the existing pilot program where people slotted, right? Because you didn't get any income information.
Oh,
That's
all right.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're serving the people that most need it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to go to Meg as a board member and then Julia.
Julia might answer my question, so I'm happy to wait.
Okay, Julia. Where'd you go?
She's on mute.
Oh, Julia, you're on mute. I can't see you right now.
Thank you for letting me know. So I think this is the right discussion to have, obviously. We've been having this discussion for a long time, since the beginning of the program, because we knew ultimately if you were to participate, you would likely want to put an AMI restriction on the program. And that, frankly, if I were in your position, I would do the same. And I think that's the right thing to do for taxpayers. So that being said, with the grant coming from Remain and other potential private money, to the extent that there are individuals who, let's say, and really who we're talking about is we're worried, I think who we're worried about are people who would renew, right? That's who we're really worried about. We're also worried about whether we're capturing, enough folks from the missing middle who may want to participate in the, sort of the growing of the program, right? Those are two distinct, I think, groups. Certainly, if you put an AMI on, whether it's 240, 175, whatever the number is, and we find that one or two individuals, one or two families do not qualify, that's where we hope that private money can come and make sure that they can still participate, especially in the renewals. That's who we're really worried about, making sure they stay in their units, right? Moving forward, the only thing I would ask you to consider is we are not generally, yes, we have families of 4, but the AMI is often for an individual, right? Who is sort of like their own household, or maybe 2 people without children. So, you maybe just think about it a little bit more encompassing in that sense. And I think the last thing is, at the end of the day, whatever you land on for a number, we obviously are super grateful if you end up participating, because that's the reason that this program will be able to go on. Just, understand that this program was always intended for the missing middle. And so when we went to the housing advocate meetings last summer and we talked about rent caps or at the unit level, the message we got was make sure people can qualify, because they can't qualify for other things. And that's why this program is so helpful, because it sort of brings in some of the people who really can't get in anywhere else. So anyways, just some thoughts, but again, it's entirely up to you.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. Meg, and then Brian.
Thanks, Rima. I'm so grateful for this presentation today, and I'm really proud that Remain stepped up to provide some additional funding. And the comment that I wanted to make was that I do think that the AMI is an interesting component of the program, and I think that it'll be important for us to identify how many people who apply qualify within the different AMI levels. But I do want to just reiterate that this is for the missing middle. And if you have a 2-income household, you have a firefighter and a teacher, you have a town employee and a hospital worker, you're likely making very close to that 175, 240 AMI in your household. Regardless, you're not making the 6 times the AMI that it requires to purchase a home at the median home price right now. So that is the missing middle. And to me, it's kind of irrelevant whether we limit it at 175 or 240. I think 240 is perfectly reasonable. I think it's something that we should track and we should look at in year 2, but I don't think that we necessarily need to limit it down to 175 at the get-go. I think that we can address a lot of really hardworking year-round community members' housing needs by keeping it at 240. Thank you.
Okay, Brian, and then Sean.
So specifically to the 175, we had lengthy conversations about the closing cost assistance program and not moving that from 175 to 240. So we currently only offer closing cost assistance up to there. And it was really based on the amount of income level is significant. I personally feel strongly keeping the funding for this at 175 or less. I would love to see a component. I think that the Placemates program and the concept of this program can have a really strong life being the warehousing year-round rental outlet on the island at a variety of income levels and opportunities. But as the Affordable Housing Trust, I think we should focus our funds and money towards affordable housing and working with people 175 and below. Allow private business to come in. I would love to see private businesses participating in the incentives directly for their employees that are accepting leases. You know, why would a business not want to pay 50% of the incentive to make sure that their employee was housed and safe rather than just making a donation? And I think that's an incredible opportunity for people to step in above 175. So you have generosity of benefactors in the community and donations that like Remain, like others that Julia has alluded to. I think there's an interesting opportunity for us to fund the need in the affordable category. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Chantal.
Thank you. I agree, Brian. I think it would be great to, I would like to see it at the 175 and stay there. But I'm curious, as we're discussing the income restrictions, what the Housing Nantucket ready to rent list looks like, because they do collect income information as we're having this conversation and, you know, looking at them as a partner in the continuation of this program. I don't know if Anne's here.
Caleb's here, maybe Caleb, or there's Anne.
Thank you.
Yeah, Caleb or Anne, if you could kind of fill us in on income levels on your ready to rent list to give us a little more info on whose needs need to be met.
Sure, it's Ann Cuspa from Housing Nantucket. Our ready to rent list does not accept applications from individual or households who earn above 150% AMI, because that's the limit of our affordable rental program. So I'm not really able to provide data in those income brackets.
Thank you, Anne. That's very helpful.
Thanks.
And how many people are on your ready to rent list?
If you give us a minute, we accept applications, like they're just constantly rolling in. So give me a minute and I'll come back with that number.
I'm going to recognize Christy.
I was just going to ask Anne or Caleb what the outcome was with the lottery for the 240% units on Honeysuckle and kind of what the need was for, what they saw for that need of those applicants.
And again, and just give me another minute and we'll assemble all that right now.
Right. Well, I'm going to comment on this. I am thrilled that Remain has made that donation. And if this works out to be a public-private partnership, I think using our funds for income restricted families units makes sense, and using the private funds for everybody else makes sense to me. So I guess when Anne gets back with that information, we'll let her break in, but why don't we, Colin, go on to the next question?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So the next question was from Brian. How are we ensuring that properties are actually not already being rented long-term prior to entering the program? So I think we answered this a little bit, but I want to just kind of give the sort of exact mechanism how it works. We showed the roadmap of a homeowner and renter on their sort of journey in the Lease to Locals program. So this pulls out the specific situation or areas where we could potentially identify that. So first, when we have a homeowner onboarding call, we get verbal confirmation of what they're doing with the property. Even to schedule the call, they have to have told us what the prior use or current use is. When they actually submit their property owner application, in this case, it's been going to Acknow Community Initiatives, there's an attestation that it's not being rented and that it's not already being rented year round in the last 12 months. On the tenant side of things, we can collect pay stubs and we do collect pay stubs and IDs, and those both show addresses and we can cross-check that. If they have the address that they're moving into, they also fill out where they're moving from. So there's a little less incentive for the tenant to sort of lie on that application. They give us honest answers. And then lastly, Julia wanted me to add this one in because Nantucket is a small community. Julia has actually been an incredible partner, as Anne will be as well, and as you guys will be a great board for this. When we get the addresses in internally, they're pushed to this kind of shared tracker. Julia has access to, look that up and ask me probing questions for, as involved as she's wanted to be, especially at the beginning. We wanted to know every scenario, every property owner, that we know the ins and outs of every history of every property. And so, we continue to have that level of diligence, and you guys being able to kind of validate with boots on the ground is super helpful there.
Great. I'm going to recognize Brian.
When there's a problem noted after the fact, I guess, so my two questions are, how are the incentives paid out? Is it lump sum at the beginning of the lease, or is there a disbursement schedule? Is the first question. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, 50-50, half up front after the tenants have moved in, half at the end of the lease.
If there is an issue that comes up after payment, what is the is there any opportunity in place? The tenant leaves the house, the lease doesn't come to fruition. Is the homeowner expecting to maintain the full incentive? For some reason, something doesn't work out, or the homeowner wasn't, even though they signed the adaptation, wasn't honest with it. Is there a process for putting a lien in on the property for the amount of the incentive or any penalty like that?
There isn't in any of the programs we run today. We could certainly explore that. With every legal counsel we review when we bring these to elected officials, that's often a question of the clawback. So there's kind of two parts to your answer. Looking backwards, could we get the money back if we paid an incentive and we found out they were not meeting the terms when we do the midpoint check-in? The kind of second answer to your question is, if we see a violation either flagged from the tenant or the sort of non-continuation of the lease, we give the opportunity for the homeowner to rectify the situation so they can get the second payment. That happens very, very infrequently, but we really prep the homeowner to say, this is on you. And we also check in with the tenants on the midpoint, right? So if the tenants leave, we want the homeowner to tell us. The tenants need to evict. We want them to tell us because we want to get them back in compliance. We want to get another qualified tenant in there. And so I think, we certainly could explore the sort of clawback of the beginning one, but our better mechanism is to not pay the second half if we see something happen. No local government we found has wanted to go through the arduous process of clawback or lien, but we could explore it. Sometimes it's almost not worth the cost if you think about the average incentive amount, but open to that idea.
If I may, Madam Chair, to Brian, sorry, Vice Chair, to Chair, sorry. So we did run into a scenario, or I think one in particular scenario that was a little tricky in the program on Nantucket. And I think where Colin's expertise comes into play every time, it's unbelievable because all of his experience with other communities. And I think we're able to, when we find something that's sort of, maybe not what we thought was going to happen, or something's raised like a little red flag, we monitor, right? And we put them on sort of a short list. And hopefully what ends up happening is we're actually sort of rectifying this situation and making sure that the tenant stays in, the second incentive gets paid and everyone's happy. But we are monitoring, you know, sort of scenarios here and there inevitably.
I see less concern on the tenant side of the transaction, right? The tenants are desperate, need housing, right? I expect tenants to have great behavior. It's on the landlord side and being able to get above free market rent rates where the potential misbehavior could be.
Well, we want to make sure that people stay in the homes for the 12-month that they've agreed to, right? That's the number one thing. And so please understand that it's a very important piece to the program for us too.
Okay, Penny.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'd like to ask who is going to, if the trust were to partially fund phase 2 of this pilot program, who is going to be responsible to secure the rental renewal commitments from the owners? And I guess I know that Colin has said that that is typically 50 to 70%, depending on the different market.
Okay. Either Julia or Colin, were you talking to, I thought, Housing Nantucket about being involved in administering this program? So maybe if that's
Sounds like there's a two-part to the question though.
Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
Actually, I would kick it off to Colin in terms of the renewals, because that's really going to be Colin's, you know, the placemate's job to go back to the homeowners as he's been doing his check-ins and seeing if they're going to renew. And maybe you can talk about the 50 to 75% again, just to clarify with Penny on the renewal rates.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, you know, where we are today is we've got built-in check-ins to our system. So when a lease is at halfway, we send a note to the homeowner and the tenant independently asking them, are you still meeting all the terms? What are your plans, both on the tenant and homeowner side? And as I said in the last meeting, every homeowner has done a check-in and said, I would like to renew with my tenants, but I'll need some additional incentive to make this work. So the commitment I'd have to the trust here today would be if we did get the go-ahead to secure funding, and it feels like it would transfer into Housing Nantucket to then write the checks. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julia or Ann, but we would then go back to those homeowners and all future homeowners in the first 22 and say, there is funding available at this amount. It's unique for every home because, again, it's based on the number of qualified tenants and the length of the lease. So what we've agreed upon in our last presentation, or sort of got head nods on, was that we would offer the renewals at 50% of the original incentive amount. So I'm just going to make a number up. If a property was available for $10,000 and they were paid $5,000 in September of this year, and I checked with them in March and they said, yeah, I want to do it, but I need to know soon. It's coming up in September. What am I going to do? We would offer them essentially, you know, a second and a third payment to keep them doing it for another 12 months. And then the schedule we've laid out is, and we don't know about the future, but the schedule would be another 25% in year 3. So that would be on me, on Placemate, both from a, you know, operational and communication standpoint, and then the actual tactical preparation of paperwork to make sure those checks would get paid would flow through Housing Nantucket with your funds and remains and wherever else they're pooled. And if we had restrictions on AMI, it would get complicated. We could manage that. We haven't had to do that before and had like a multi-tiered system. So it can be done, and I would figure out a way to do it.
Great. Okay, I'm going to go to Tom Dixon.
Yeah.
Great.
Hi, Colin. I have a kind of question that's a little bit different than this. So obviously, of course, we've been going through all the different scenarios if the trust decides to fund this program, et cetera. And because we're municipal, there's a couple different layers, et cetera. So I'm kind of curious, how would the program change from Act Now Community Initiatives and yourself changing from us funding and Housing Nantucket as far as data privacy goes? I'm curious who would have access to this data, and possibly how the trust could, you know, I don't think that we necessarily want to get into, or, you know, maybe that would be a part of it, seeing folks' names and all that. But I'm curious because the organization that I work for in my job is Nantucket Food, Fuel, and Rental Assistance, and we do many cases of rental assistance, and data privacy is a major part of that. And so it just any kind of color you could provide on that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. And Julia, I'm not sure if you want to add anything for what level of detail. So when it was private, right? Do we want to start there with what you were provided? Because then when we looked at bringing it to the public, we scrubbed PII, personally identifying information, to make sure there wasn't any sort of, public data shared. For example, at this meeting, we haven't shared, other than when they told us explicitly they could, we haven't shared names of homeowners or tenants or addresses. We've just shared street name, right? So Julie, is there anything you want to add on to that with Act Now before I can talk about
I mean, just so you understand how it's been working, and I don't think that it would change from a Housing Nantucket standpoint. I mean, it's basically two people. It's Colin and I who have access to the information, and this information is not shared. Of course, you may have your own twist on it, but I think as long as we keep it at a high level, like street name, like we said, and Colin, maybe you have color in terms of like how you show it to other communities, how you're showing Provincetown, how are you doing it elsewhere?
Yeah, and so most of the time when we're submitting to be paid through a local jurisdiction, there is, so I'll give you an example. It's near and dear to us. The town of Truckee was hacked, and there was a new security officer brought in, and he said, we can no longer use Dropbox. We want to use Laserfiche, this new system. It's more secure. So we've migrated to that. So we'll flex to what is required at the local jurisdiction level when they're the ones that want to receive the W-9 that has the Social Security from the homeowner to pay the taxes, right? The addresses, the leases, so there's a lot of PII and also a lot of just details that we want to make sure are secured. With Housing Nantucket, I think that would be on us. The way I would envision it happening would be that the Affordable Housing Trust and Remain and other funders would get somewhat anonymized data. It would be aggregated. It could be at the property level if we scrubbed PII, but to Julia's point, there would be a transmission of data purely from so taxes, right? You need a social to pay the homeowner to be able to have the check identified to an EIN or an SSN. So there's a lot of details that we'd have to now transition from Act Now CI into Housing Nantucket, and may want to weigh on this now as well. We haven't specifically talked about that, but I think know that we too care about personally identifying information and protect that as well. And nothing on our website or nothing that the homeowners or tenants fill out is ever public. It's always obfuscated data and submitted just to who it needs to be submitted, and then often deleted on their end. Especially at the town or county level.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that, historically, we have relied on Housing Nantucket to qualify applicants at the different area median income levels. And I think that we would probably want to have them do that if we're involved in this program, just as, a continuation. Okay, are there any more questions on this one? No, go ahead, Brian, move on. What, did we have more?
Colin.
Sorry.
That's okay. And is this the time you would also like to either speak about that or speak about the data? Just because your name was mentioned, I wonder if you want to talk about ready to rent list and anything else before I move on.
Sure. Ann Cuspa again. So we looked at the Honeysuckle Drive homeownership. So like we talked about, up to 240% AMI. It's generally basically between, let's say, 150 to 240 AMI. There were 17 qualified applicants for that homeownership opportunity. It's different because it's homeownership and you need to be prepared to buy a home, and that needs to be one of your goals. So we're talking about rentals here. So it's different. And also we advertised for the opportunity basically 60 days, whereas when we compare it to our ready to rent list, this is about 10 years we have of data, and also going down to the very low income level, say 50% AMI, all the way up through 150% AMI. So right now we have over 800 households on our ready to rent list, but I kind of wanted to make it So we could at least say what's a reasonable amount of time that we're capturing, accepting applications. And so basically, since the beginning of the year, let's say, is about 350 new applications from people who would, households who would like to be placed in one of our affordable rental units. So that's up to 150% AMI. So bottom line, large demand from below 150 AMI for rentals.
Thank you, Anne. Penny. Yeah.
Sorry, you're faster than I was. I wondered if Colin or Julia could tell, I know you've told us this at one of our previous meetings, but could you remind us what the cost is of the administration of the program as a percentage of the program expense? And clarify for us who's paying that?
So the way we laid it out to you guys last meeting and the last few meetings is the understanding that this is like part of the program cost, right? In a sense, because typically a nonprofit would have like an office, overhead, you know, all sorts of sort of expenses, administrative expenses. We're only talking about the cost to administer the program, nothing else. And so we have the cost of Placemate, which this year was $100,000, and next year is going to be bumped up a little bit because we're doubling the size of the program. That's our hope. So more units, more tenants, more everything. And also it's going to add a little complexity to the extent that we do have sort of these legacy people who, you know, may not qualify AMI wise, and we have a different bucket over here. And then we have a bucket of people with AMI. So we're going to add a little complexity to the program, which is great. Quite honestly, I've said from the get-go, the value that Placemate brings is second to none. And I've been nothing but impressed with Colin's team. I have nothing but glowing recommendations. So I view it as really good bang for our buck, frankly. So that's 120,000. And then on top of that, we added, it's an estimate based on what we've been doing for the last 6 to 8 months, $30,000 of basically marketing, a little fundraising, a little admin, but it's really sort of like, you know, let's say Anne needs a few hours for a person a week. And then we need to do some current, some little inky advertising, and then a little bit of fundraising, and that's it.
So just to finish, who's paying for the administrative costs?
So we have said since the beginning, this is already even without Remain's money, this was a private-public partnership proposal to you all. With Remain, it makes it even more concrete on the grant side. We've said since the beginning that this 150 is something that is our responsibility to raise.
For this next year.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Colin. Oh, still muted, Colin.
Thank you. Zoom does tell you that. Brian asked, are we allowing property owners who have multiple units to participate in the program and receive multiple grants? So in the program guidelines today, the way it's written, you could have multiple properties. The idea, I think Julia mentioned earlier, is we were trying to keep this program open so that we could see what the pilot would garner. We could add in a restriction, meaning if you were, one of the challenges, just to be frank, is that, a lot of properties are owned in LLCs, and it's obvious gated ownership or owned by multiple people or corporations, and it can be sometimes hard to track that down. So open to discussion on this if we'd like. Currently, you would be allowed, as long as you met the program guidelines, to have multiple properties. There is a maximum number of grants per property. So if you had a multifamily property, there's a max of 6 total qualified tenants across 2 units, that sort of thing, just to control for like one giant property not taking, everything.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Lee Smith.
Hi, thanks. Just on your point about the properties being held by LLCs or similar corporate entities, I know in municipal transactions or state transactions that there's a requirement for a disclosure of beneficial interest for the property involved, and I'm wondering if you've got anything similar or would consider that to really get to the bottom of who you're dealing with.
Yeah, we do ask for statements of authority, or, Julia, maybe you can expand on this because you helped me look a few of these up. We were usually able to get some official documentation. I can, after the meeting, pull up the exact verbiage unless Julia has it offhand.
I think we do some of our own research based on what we require, the certificate of authorization for the LLC, for example. But certainly if, Attorney Lee, if you have more specific documents you're looking for, I mean, at the end of the day, this money is going to be, we may not be scrutinized like a municipality, but we want to do the best practices. We've been doing a lot of our own research on this end for sure.
Thank you.
Brian.
I ask this question because there are projects that are coming up in the future. Some at planning board phases. There are individual property owners that own a significant number of rentals as is. I would hate to see one ownership entity cannibalize the funding opportunity that could be spread out throughout the community and have more positive ambassadors kind of out there, individual community members as homeowners sharing positive experiences about converting to year-round versus a development coming in that had 12 units and all of a sudden captured, because they were 12 new units owned by somebody, all of a sudden captured 11 subsidies that weren't available to other ambassadors. So that's kind of my thought process and thinking of this question is why I put it out there.
Yeah, I think that's important to consider. That's almost, like somebody with an apartment building or a lot of units, upstairs and commercial downstairs. It's almost like a commercial use. And, maybe that is an entity that wouldn't qualify for a program like this, in my mind.
So, Madam Vice Chair, just to be clear, they would not qualify for more than 2 grants right now on a single property. But to your point, if you want to get to the other scenario, which is really like the multi-property owner, then that's definitely something we can build into this, and that makes sense.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Dave Iverson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For one, a lot of those mixed use developments with apartments upstairs have already been deed restricted in the process a lot of times by the planning board to either employee housing or year-round housing. So I don't think any of those, if those deed restrictions exist, they probably should not be, they shouldn't be able to be part of the program. And I don't mean to put Lee, if I may through you, Madam Chair, Lee Smith on the spot, but I still wasn't real comfortable with his explanation or his assurances around the federal fair housing law. So I just want to make sure that isn't going to restrict, if we choose to put money into this program, that we don't come across roadblocks that's going to make this not as effective as we hope it will, if that makes sense.
All right. Lee, do you want to answer that, or do you want to?
Sure. I did say earlier that I didn't look at that narrow question yet, but I can do that and have a response for you for your next meeting.
Great. That would be super helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Colin.
Okay. The next question from Brian was, I've heard things on Facebook about property owners who do or don't qualify for the program. So Brian, I think we misunderstood that it was on, what you were asking, but we got some additional context after the meeting. Maybe what you saw on Facebook, I think, is the question on blood relation. So we have a restriction that a qualified tenant cannot be related to or employed by the property owner. And the idea there is just that if you own a house and you want to rent to your blood related relative or your employee, you should already be doing that. And we shouldn't need to give you an incentive to do that necessarily. That's a real arm's length close transaction. The idea of and we learned this from our other markets, when we saw that, when people would say, hey, I want to rent instead of short-term renting my ski condo in Vail, I want to rent to my son so him and his friends can be lifties. And we'd be like, all right, well, then do that. We don't need to give you money to do that. You should just do that. So that was the idea of this one. So that's in the program policies. That certainly could be adjusted and struck out if we felt that was needing to be changed.
Okay, Penny.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that if somebody owns a property and they're choosing to rent it year round, why should they not be able to participate in this? And what's the logic behind that? I don't understand it.
Colin, I think that's directed at you.
They certainly can. They won't get credit for a qualified tenant if they're a blood relative or a employee of theirs.
But why not? There are people all over this community renting at or like certainly below market to relatives.
Yeah, again, this is the conversion, right? So if you have a short-term rental and you want to convert it into a long-term rental to rent to your children, we want to save funding for people that are not directly blood related. That was the rationale. Julia's got her hand up, so maybe she can give a little more context. This was something she felt strongly about. We added in the restrictions on property owner not renting to their employee or blood relative for very specific reasons. Julia,
to me, from a logical standpoint, that is counter to what you're trying to do here. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go to Brian and then Julia.
I just want to be clear that this program is not an STR conversion program. Like the idea of it was, but the results shown through the data is only a couple of the actual properties converted. So I want to be clear, if we're setting up like some of them were not used at all and then converted to year round, or were being used in a different manner. So I just want to be sure we're clear on what we're going to fund and create. If it's an STR conversion program, then let's stay in that lane. But if we're going to do a wider lane, let's be clear what that looks like. And so I just want to understand, I know the intent was represented as an STR conversion, but the data is not showing that. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
Julia.
You're absolutely right, Brian. And that is the essential, that is the reason, right? So we have it, I think, at the back of the deck. It's 40% of the units that were STRs, that used to be STRs in some capacity, that were brought into this program, right, into year-round rentals. But we purposefully did not create solely an STR conversion program because our goal was to open this up to as many people as possible who were perhaps sitting on a garage apartment, who perhaps had, the back cottage used to be the son or the daughter, they moved off island, they went to college, whatever the situation was, we wanted to incentivize homeowners to create year-round rentals. So in that respect, Penny, this is why it would be difficult to then say to a homeowner who would say, well, the garage apartment used to be my son's home, but it was technically our home. I'm going to start year-round renting it to them. And can I please have some grant money? So it gets very tricky. And I totally understand, Penny, where you're coming from. If this was only an STR conversion program, I think we could do what you said. We could open it up to immediate family members, to whoever. But I think if you open it up to the way it's structured right now, you would really open up the opportunity to game, and really you wouldn't necessarily be creating year-round rentals the way that you're trying to create year-round rentals. And I think it would be not the best use of your money.
Penny.
Yeah, I'm sorry, through you, Madam Vice Chair, to Julia. You're talking about two separate things. You're talking about whether or not there are existing rentals that are properties that are already being rented on a year-round basis. That's not what I was talking about earlier. I was talking about why should somebody who's related to somebody be precluded from participating in this program if the goal is to get more units into year-round occupancy. Just because somebody's related, they're at a disadvantage.
So perhaps the way we could come to and Colin, let me know if you think this works. What we could say is that blood relative could qualify so long as the unit had been used as a short-term rental for those specific cases. But if you're going to say it was used as a primary home, then I think that's really tricky to then say, oh, we're now going to have sort of this arm's length transaction on the same property. And
So the more likely, excuse me, through you, Madam Vice Chair, the more likely scenario, I think, is something is newly built and now the owner has a choice about whether to rent it to a blood relative or somebody else on a year-round basis. Why should they be penalized? That's all. We don't need to belabor this. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Colin, next section.
Yeah, so the last question, is there a mechanism to allow people who want to donate their properties as a tax write-off but don't need the incentive? Brian had mentioned this also earlier about, I think layered on, could business owners also participate? So there's I think this kind of overarching theme of other creative ways to to have lease to locals extend to other things. That's kind of the way it's written today. So I think definitely we can explore this. And Brian, you mentioned this too, like if PlaceMate's marketplace becomes the pseudo clearinghouse for locals housing transactions, that would be great. We have a mechanism for it. Other places like Truckee, that happens. People post all the time and say, hey, I can't qualify for lease to locals, but I am looking to rent out a room. And they're connected with people and it stays in the local community and it's kind of a homegrown thing. I'd love for that to happen in Nantucket as well. So that's kind of the answer to that question. Moving on to the next one, and I've realized as I said that we actually have this these were questions that were emailed in afterwards. Can businesses whose employees are participating in lease to locals actively contribute? And again, we can definitely explore reaching out to business owners after the fact and saying, hey, you know, you have a homeowner that rented to your employee and would love to have you contribute to the lease to locals you know, sort of transaction here. We've never done this in other places. You know, we've explored this with a lot of different municipalities on the idea of businesses participating. I could spend an hour talking about all the different ways we've tried to make this work. I think it could be interesting fundraising opportunities for some employers. I would hate to see smaller employers feel like their back was against the wall and they had to participate in something that maybe they, while they benefit from, didn't actually help facilitate and didn't sign up for. So I think it was opt-in after the fact. That would be a great thing for us to go out and either an individual level at a larger employer level to sort of fundraise for via Housing Nantucket to fill the coffers.
Brian.
Oops. So my intent in asking that question was not for it to be a fundraising element. It was to be a requirement of the incentive, because while the individuals, the tenants, are seeing a great benefit at the opportunity to rent, it is the business that is seeing the most significant opportunity in our community and being able to maintain business. So I believe that there could be an element, and maybe it's not this year, but I would push very hard in future years for any continued funding that the business were participating at a financial level to keep the programs funded and running. What the question wasn't intended as, would it worked out, will you please make a donation? It was intended as, we're about to distribute the first payment, would like you to pay 33% of it. That was the.
Thanks, Brian. Go ahead, Colin, move on.
Thank you. And I would love to explore that, Brian. So thank you for the clarification. Is there a way to have employers or another NGO participate financially for the trust not be the sole provider? I think that's a layer on question for the same one. Unless anyone wants to raise their hand, I'll move on to the next question. All right. What happens when the program ends? What happens what has happened in other communities? So we only have one market where we've truly started the wind down process, at least to locals, and that's Summit County, Colorado. That's where the town of Breckenridge is located. They had reached out to us. They did a true short-term rental conversion program with incentives, really large, up to $24,000 for a 3-bedroom unit. They started out saying this was just going to be a 1-year program, and we want to put $1 million towards this, and it was wildly successful. We converted 45 short-term rentals prior to the ski season in 2021. It was a great program, and we knew it was going to have a shelf life. We went back to the county commissioners 6 months later and said, great, we'll get ready to wind this down unless you want to continue the program. And they said, well, COVID is not over and the impact of the housing market's not over. So let's do it for another year. And they put a total of $2 million. We've been back to them several times over the last 6 months. And actually, Brian, you may be interested to know that the idea of keeping the program going was actually transitioning from the local government public funds being used to having the private sector fund this as more like a master lease program. And the complexities of building out that program and getting employer participation basically killed it. No employer wanted to actually have to pay. They talk a lot like they want to, but they didn't. So that program is fully winding down by the end of this calendar year. But we did very strong communication to homeowners and tenants to let them know this was happening, and we're measuring the data to understand how many keep renting even without an additional subsidy, and reporting that back to the Board of County Commissioners there in Summit County.
Thanks, Colin. Penny.
Yes, through you, Madam Vice Chair, to Colin. Do you have any data, or I guess better asked, will you have any data on where all those people went to live?
Yes.
That would be helpful to know at some point.
All right, Colin, is that the end of what you have for us?
That's the end of that section.
Okay.
And just
All
to
right.
kind of the very last thing is basically we brought this slide up the last time, and this is where we went into a lengthy discussion. So I think that, again, the ask, and I think this may be where we shift into board discussion, deliberation, bring it to a vote. But Christy or Madam Vice Chair, you can let me know. I'll just reiterate, and we stated this at the beginning, the ask is to fund a relaunch of this program, call it year one. We were in the pilot to, and I think this would be actually brought down to $450,000 if I heard the news at the beginning correctly, to fund year one new properties and renewals of existing properties in the pilot program. So a $450,000 ask. So I'll just stop talking and stop sharing my screen for now, and I can always reshare if there's slides we want to review, but I think mostly what we covered was the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Colin. So I feel like we still have a little bit more for Lee to dig into for us. Just any other board comments or discussion? Do we feel ready for action, or would we like to get a little bit more information and defer to the next meeting? Penny.
Yeah, I really want to defer to the next meeting. I'm not prepared to vote today on this.
Okay. And Meg?
I would be happy to vote today, but if Penny's wants to wait on getting back news about the fair housing question, I just want to be really clear about what outstanding questions we may have so that we can give them exactly what information we need to be provided. That being said, fully supported. I think $450,000 of investment into housing nearly 100 people is just an amazing opportunity, and I'm so excited about this collaboration.
Thank you, Meg. I'm going to go to Brian and then Christy, and then I guess if Meg's finished, or Penny again. So
I'd like to wait until we hear back from Lee, but for me, in a moving forward conversation, I'd really like to see any funding from the trust go to 175% or below. And now understanding the clarity on the number of units, that it's no more than 2 units in one building. I'd like to see the incentive not go to more than 2 units per owner. So across multiple properties. I think I'll double check my details, but Colin, great presentation. Thank you for following up on all the questions. That's it for me for today.
Okay, and Christy and then Penny.
Thank you. Just to steer, Lee, Provincetown has adopted the Lease to Locals program, and this question of fair housing came up several times with their town manager. So that just might be a quick spot to find a quick answer as to how KP Law resolved the questions when it came before their select board. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Penny and then Dave.
This is the last thing I'm gonna say. Two things. I would prefer, instead of calling this year one, I'd prefer to talk about this as pilot phase 2. I'm more comfortable with that. And it would be extremely helpful, Colin and Julia, if you could get us some information on the level of commitment of the existing people. I mean, we're almost at the end of your first year, but you don't have a full year done yet, right? So I'd like to know kind of what we're talking about with the existing folks. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Dave.
Thanks. I'd like to just follow up with what Brian said. I support that 175, limiting to how many each owner can have. I think all are good ideas. And then when we hear about how Provincetown's navigated the fair housing, federal and state, I think that'll be very helpful in making a decision. So thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Tom.
Yeah, I agree with Dave and Sully and others that I think the 175 makes sense. And I would just say, I'm sure that Christy has spoken to Brian Turbot at length about this, but just that any future motion would be contingent on that Brian and his department is comfortable with the finances on this. And also, Christy, if you could, as we get further along, maybe run this by the town CTO to make sure that and not that I'm alleging, of course, anything, but that Placemates, privacy policy, and et cetera, how it relates to municipal money and et cetera is okay with the town technology department.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Dave, your hand's still up. Do you have something else? Okay. No.
Just a wandering hand. I'm sorry.
Okay. And I agree with Brian on pretty much everything, especially the 175% for our part. So I just want to thank Colin and Julia and Mary, you have, oh, right. I'm sorry. Mary, want to finish? Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. I wish, well, the last Lease to Locals, the Affordable Housing Trust, I thought today was a continuation and therefore more of a continuation of public comment in that vein. And so that's why I launched right into it. And of course you stopped me. So I will just say, you know, are we safer right now as a community because 9 hospital employees are housed right now because of this program? And I would say definitely. And I'm just going to pretty much shorten it. I think it's about safety. And as an island, we are vulnerable anyway. And I think that it is worth, I'm not a very good public speaker, I'm sorry. It is worth the tax dollars spent for protection, safety, and security. And although I appreciate all the deep questions you guys are asking, and it's all important, and it's very academic, I think that we need to do this thing. And I think as a community, we will be much safer, and all of us here right now will be. Bad things happen, and we're lucky when they don't. There's tons of firefighters that live off island, a lot of them do. If there's a blazing fire, how is that going to pan out in the middle of the night? If you have a cardiac arrest in the middle of the night and the most experienced EMTs are not living here, how's that going to work out for you? I just think that we should think about safety and insurance and also the other things that you guys are talking about. But I think safety is primary. And I do have some experience talking with you all a couple of years ago about this very thing. And I wrote to the Frolics a couple of years ago. And so I'm talking because I'd like to have a voice. And I think I've made a difference. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mary. I think you have made a difference, and I appreciate your comments and your efforts. And I think that we are finding our way forward. Maybe not quite as speedily as people like, but you know, we're a municipal agency, and this is looking good in my eyes. Thanks. Okay, let's go to other business. Our next meeting will be July 9th at 12:30. After that, we're scheduled for July 16th at 12:30. And I'm turning it over to Christy.
I just wanted to make a comment that the July 9th meeting will be focused on the year-round deed restriction. That's going to be the main item on the agenda to firm up those guidelines.
Thanks. Lee?
Thank you. I have to excuse myself. I've got a family child commitment issue, but my colleague Eric Barth has been on the call the whole time. You can stay on. So thank you. I apologize again. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Lee. Okay. Penny?
Are we at board comments yet?
I believe we're at board comments.
I just want to personally thank you, Rima, for all of the work that you've done for the Affordable Housing Trust and for this community, and we're going to miss working with you. So thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Not an easy decision, I'll tell you that.
And while I promise my internet went out, you've been doing such a wonderful job. I was just going to leave you with the last meeting.
All right. Okay. Well, I would entertain a motion to end the public portion of the meeting and go into executive session. Who would like to do that?
I'll move that.
All right. You gotta say the words.
All right, move to adjourn from public session to executive session for the purpose of purpose 6 pursuant to MGL 30A to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
Not to return to public meeting.
Not to return to public meeting.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's have a vote on that.
I'll second that.
Oh, second, okay, sorry, Dave. Thank you, Brian. And the vote, Dave Iverson.
Job well done, Meg. Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Brian Sullivan.
Aye.
Meg Brower.
Aye.
And Chantal Bras Murphy.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. See you on the other side.